Hello, my name is Alex Arse and welcome to the Mailman Heritage Trail in Northumberland. Now in this episode we're going to look at around about 1200 BC and an event that basically shook the Bronze Age world and actually had a ripple-on effect for a long period of time afterwards, and then discuss votive offerings in the Bronze Age. So around about 1200 BC, what happens is that in Iceland a volcano called Mount Hekla explodes, and when that explodes it throws millions of tons of dust and ash into the atmosphere and causes global cooling. Now when this causes global cooling, the world becomes a lot colder, a lot damper. Lowland areas become marshy or become flooded. Upland areas become no longer habitable until the early first millennium BC, so around about 900, 800 BC, or what we start seeing as the start of the British Iron Age. So because of that, people are now forced to live in a smaller area, and when they're forced to live into a smaller area, we start seeing a very interesting thing going on here in northern Britain and across the other parts of Europe as well. And this is the start of widespread use of votive offerings. Now a votive offering is where you take an item of high value and you ritually kill it, you break it into pieces. So for instance, bronze swords, bronze spears, items like that were ritually killed, and then when they were ritually killed they were then deposited into watery areas, and when they were deposited into watery areas they were then offered up, and then we see this happening over and over again. Sometimes you see 30-40 items at a time being deposited in, and some of the larger ones in the south of England have discovered up to 800-900 items that are all made of bronze in the landscape. They're being sacrificed to possibly the deities at that time. Now there are a number of different interpretations about what's happening here, but it could be a form of ritual sacrifice where they're desperately trying to petition the gods to actually change the climate back, to try and stop this global cooling, to stop the this period of cold wet weather that would have meant they could no longer farm in the hills, and the lowland areas were becoming marshy and it was more difficult to live. So because of this we start seeing this votive offerings. Now when we have these votive offerings, there could be far more than we actually ever realized, because from the 17th century onwards a lot of the more marshy land in Britain started to be drained using brilliant technologies that had come across from the Netherlands. They started to drain the landscape, and as they started to drain the landscape, a lot of the watery sites that had existed may not be known about anymore. And so in those watery sites there may still be votive offerings that we just haven't discovered yet. And when we haven't discovered these votive offerings, they may still show more of this Bronze Age sort of collapse. You know, obviously there's a very famous book, the year 1177, the year the world collapsed, where obviously we see the massive Bronze Age collapse that goes on there, and we see entire civilizations just wiped out because of the effect of this knock-on of trade networks. Here in the British Isles as well, the elites of these people, they would have actually been connected into that Bronze Age trade network with the Atlantic trade network feeding into the Mediterranean trade network, and so because of that they were taking some of the most precious things they had, these bronze items, and were sacrificing them into the water to try and petition the gods. Over the next few centuries though, that becomes more of a habit, and maybe whenever a tribal chieftain or an elite needed to make a very important decision, they would take an item of incredible importance to them and then they would sacrifice it into the water, so they would be assigned to the local people. This is what you did when you were trying to petition the gods. This is what you were trying to do to bring the gods on side, to bring favor when you were doing important things like maybe developing a new settlement, going to war, planting new fields, harvest time, those sort of things. You're doing something in return so that the gods give you something back. Because in the ancient world what we often see is, unlike in the modern world, we believe that due to the sort of Judeo-Christian ideology that God is benevolent, God is on our side, God loves us, whereas actually in the ancient world the gods were cruel, uncaring and very brutal, and so because of that you have to bribe them, get them on side with sacrifices and things like that. And we see in some parts of the world this eventually eventually evolves into human sacrifice, which we see a lot in the Low Countries and in Britain. When they're doing peat cutting, they can often find these people who've been ritually sacrificed and deposited into the water as well. So all of this together shows how these votive offerings, these high status bronze items, were then sacrificed into the water as massive hoards, and then this was basically a way of trying to petition the gods or trying to sort of bend their arm for favour in turn. I really hope you've enjoyed this video today and you've learned something about Bronze Age votive offerings, the sacrifices that were going on then, and you've got more of an image of the Bronze Age world and how one event of a volcano exploding across an Iceland can totally change the way people ritually act, but also international trade and the way people view the world as well. As always, please like and subscribe, share with your friends, and if you've really enjoyed the video today, also consider being a Patreon, where you can actually have an influence on the direction some of the content of the channel will be produced in the future. Until next time though, stay safe and well, and thank you very much.